And so could you perhaps elaborate upon this view of embodied cognition? And the other day you were telling me about, I think, was it 4E?
Yes.
And then
A.
Yes. So what is this about?
Yeah. So these 4 E's are, first is embodied, then inactive, then extended, and then embedded cognition. And then A signifies affective cognition. So affect is our emotions, feelings, and all this kind of stuff. And traditionally, again, philosophy has never been very keen to entertain the role of affect. So as we know, in Stoic philosophy, we believe that whenever we have to think rationally, we should separate emotions, affect, feelings, all of these things, because they distort our rational, logical thinking. So affect has always been downplayed in traditional philosophy. But in this new paradigm, we are saying that affect is actually playing a causal role in our cognition. And there are many examples of it, like in social cognition. Social cognition is our ability to understand mental state of others. And in philosophy, we know as problem of other mind, that all we have access to is to our own mental state, inner mental state, and not to the other's mental state. But still we understand to a certain extent the minds of others, that whether other is happy or angry or in fear. So this is what in cognitive science we call as social cognition, and in philosophy traditionally it was problem of other mind. But when I have access to my own mental state, how do I attain some access to the other's mental state of mind? So in philosophy we call it empathy. Like the ability to see the things from others' point of view, the ability to fit in the other's shoe. So, what is the cognitive mechanism which is happening here? Now, in cognitive science also, there are 2 approaches here. One is TT, other is ST. TT is theory. ST is the simulation theory. Now, TT says that we are actually using some kind of theory, a cold theory, to understand, to rather infer the mind of other. It's a same kind of inferential process which a scientist uses while understanding a phenomenon, say in physics, chemistry, and similarly there are some kind of rules.
So an example of this would be what, like say we have a certain reading on a machine, right? Whenever an electron pops up, and then we conduct an experiment someplace else, right? And once again, this same reading pops up. So we are to infer from our theory that if this reading we observe, there is an electron, we therefore infer that there is also an electron inferred in this other observation. Is that what you mean? So like from
it's a cold theorizing. I mean, it doesn't involve anything to do with affect or emotion or the experiential part.
I see. So what would be an example of ST, which is simulation theory?
I'll come to that. So in simulation theory, we say that we are not using any theorizing. We are actually reactivating the emotional state which others through doing a kind of projection of others' facial expressions or others' gestures on our own body. Now this projection happens in an automatic manner. It's not that I'm consciously trying to mimic others' facial expressions or gestures into my body. This is what we say in cognitive neuroscience, the role of mirror neurons. So that's another remarkable revolutionary discovery in cognitive science. It was discovered by an Italian neuroscientist, Rizzolatti, and it was popularized more by V.S. Ramachandran, who is basically of Indian origin but working in University of California, San Diego, I guess. So what the theory says that
now you're talking about mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are employed in the simulation theory.
I see.
Okay, so we can go systematically in this manner, that at psychological level, simulation theory would say that when I look at some other person, his facial expression, if he is angry with me, then that gets projected, as I already said, on my own facial expressions in an automatic manner. And how it is accomplished, as I said, through mirror neuron. So what is mirror neuron? Mirror neuron is, they are part of the motor neurons, which are responsible for our facial muscles movement, grimacing, or whatever muscular movement on the facial muscles we acquire. Now we do some actions through our hands. So for that we use motor neurons, and so suppose I'm hammering, and my motor neurons corresponding to that action is activated. Now when I see some other person doing hammering, I'm not doing any action, but I'm only perceiving him, and the same motor neurons, they get activated.
I see.
That's
so it's
very-
like seeing someone else get pinched on their hand and they make a certain expression, right? And just by seeing that, we're also we cringe a little. We're like, oh, what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Or if someone is about to jump off a cliff
Yes.
from a bungee jump, we also cringe as if we are in their position. So
Yes.
mirror
Or if some
neurons are responsible
dog
for
or
that
some
reaction.
animal is biting in the film to the actor, and we pull our leg backwards,
Yes.
as if we are being bitten. So mirror neuron is behind all of this, because our motor neurons, they get activated automatically merely by looking at someone else doing motor action. Now, since my motor neurons are activated, so I know I do that particular motor action with certain intention. So I infer that other person is having that same intention, which I have when I do that motor action. So this is a way in which we naturally tend to understand the mental state of other. So in the similar manner, the facial expression, say, of joy or anger or sad, which I see on the face of other, that is using mirror neurons, that is being projected on my facial muscles in my motor cortex. And so my mirror neurons, as I said, mirror neurons are part of motor cortex. So I am getting that kind of activation in my motor cortex, and then I am getting to know that the same kind of mental state he must be experiencing, which I do experience when I make these kind of facial expressions. And all of this happens at a subpersonal level. I'm not consciously thinking about this whole phenomenon. Evolutionary processes have, most probably they have developed these mechanisms inside us, and they were vitally required for our survival, because our evolutionary history is like we have gone through prey-predator relationships. So it was very important for us to cooperate with each other for hunting, and also to warn each other about some predators. That if there is a lion around, then I need to inform my friend. So how can I do so? So I make some expression of fear, and I will make some hand gestures, which is like lion-like, which are indicating that there is some fierce animal, say lion, is around us. So these kind of,
or perhaps at a more subtle level, we could just change our own facial expression.
Yes,
right?
we do.
When we look at a lion, and that would signal to the to the other members of the tribe that why is this person scared? Probably because they saw a danger or saw a lion, right? Most probably.
Yes. So evolutionarily, we have gone through this kind of hostile environment. We are not like descendants of some computer software. We have evolutionarily, our ancestors, they have gone through these kind of hostilities, and we have communicated each other through our gestures. So before these language of sounds came into being, we used to communicate using our gestures. So that's another thing, that how language came into existence. There's a paper by R.B. Van Rizzoletti, same Rizzoletti who's discoverer of mirror neuron.
I see.
Where they do make a connection between our gestural communication, our sounds, and which is mediated by mirror neuron activation. So they rather label the paper language within grasp.
I see.
And it is here, grasp is in two senses, like how we attain language evolutionarily, how we grasp language, and also they are using grasp in the literal sense that when we see someone grasping an object, then using our mirror neurons, we understand the intention of that other animal grasping something. Whether someone is grasping a banana, so he wants to eat it or he wants to throw it to someone else. Contextual factors also they play a role, but this basic mechanism of mirroring through which we activate our own motor cortex and thereby we understand the intention of the other as well. So social cognition or intention reading, that becomes one precursor, one cognitive precursor to attain human language. So there is a continuity here. Language is not falling from sky all of a sudden or by gene mutation, as Chomsky says. That earlier he used to say that some 50,000 years ago, not even 50, some 20,000 years ago, just gene mutation happened and which enabled us with language. And once we acquired language and we started thinking in propositional form as well. Then with some more evidence, he started accepting that, okay, some 50,000 years ago, this gene mutation happened. But I think the process is much more older. It's not merely, doesn't seem to be the case of merely a gene mutation and we get equipped by a syntax, which is recursive syntax for him. But if we go by this evolutionary story, then our social cognitive ability, our intention reading ability is one precursor
to language
ability.
So, but the thing here is that perhaps one could say that social cognition and intention reading in itself is a language. I mean, if I make an expression like this, I'm scared,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Now a person has to, this is a sign essentially. Language is a system of signs, right? And this is also a sign. Now the other person has to infer from the sign, maybe we should not use Saussurean terminology, but it's like, what is the signified thing, right? What is the pointed thing? What are we pointing at with this expression? So it could be that, well, this is a scary expression, so he must be scared because of something. If I'm smiling and I'm very happy, that is also a sign and that has to be read.
Yes.
You see, so you say that intention reading is a precursor to language, but intention reading in itself can be considered a language.
No, for Chomsky's scheme, this is not centrally, not central part of the language. For him, the central part of language is syntax, which interacts with intention reading, and also with the sensory motor regions. Their sensory motor regions are they are playing secondary role in Chomsky's scheme. They are merely to gather sensory data and to articulate your sentence, utter the sentence. So they are not centrally figuring it. And for him, social cognition is not central part of language. You are admitting that, okay, and normally also people admit that we do communicate through our gestures. And but for Chomsky, this is not really central. For him, the central thing is the syntax, and that is a kind of rule. And that again is similar to the tendency of analytical philosophy. That central cognitive role is played by a kind of abstract rule. This abstract rule has nothing to do with human experiences or bodily experiences or emotions, nothing. It is just an abstract rule. And sometimes they even go to the extent that these kind of abstract rules or logical rules or mathematical rules, so they exist independent of human existence. They have their own ontology. So these kind of utterances also goes through.
So to go back to Frege's article thought, right?
Yeah.
There he does consider, well, let's just say, what if it were the case that each person had their own personal ideas, right? Then the issue becomes how exactly do we interact with these ideas? How exactly do we communicate, right? And on the basis of that, I suppose he concludes that thought must neither be, of course, because it cannot be a sensory thing, it is not a physical thing, it is not a material thing, but for this reason, thought can also not be an idea, because idea is something in our heads. Right? And of course, this has a lot of presuppositions. The fact that there is a representation of reality going on here and we are not directly engaging with reality and whatnot. But don't you find merit in his arguments? Because I think he does consider, well, if we are to have our own set of ideas, then how exactly is it that something like thought emerges, which is not material, but at the same time it is something with which we can all interact.
Yeah, actually, exactly these kind of ideas with which I am fighting in philosophy department itself. His idea seems to be valid because, as I said earlier as well, that we normally don't think that our concepts or our ideas, they have anything to do with experiences. Such kind of references are there in the ancient Indian philosophy as well. So when they say that when you talk about fire, your tongue is not set on fire. When you talk about a sword, your tongue doesn't get cut into pieces. So these kind of views are there, but this is what happens when we go to our only personal level experience, as I have already described. And you raise one thing, that what about the objectivity of thought? I mean, if there are different people having different ideas, so they may mean different things by the same referent, right? Now, to this, my view is that we have probably overplayed the differences of subjectivity. Since we have similar kind of bodies and bodily experiences, like if I dip my finger in 100 degrees centigrade, I mean in boiling water, it appears hot to not only to me but to you and for most of us as well. And similarly, ice appears cold to most of the people. So my view is that we have probably just overplayed these differences of subjectivity. And regarding the gross sensory-motor experiences with the world, we have similar kind of experiences. So if we ground a philosophy in sensory-motor experiences, and even the abstract concept embodied cognition informs us that these abstract concepts are also encoded or represented in our sensory cortex, motor cortex, and regions responsible for affect. Now these sensory motor and affective experiences, they are more or less same for most of us, one thing. And second thing is that we have intersubjectivity. Now this intersubjectivity is something considered very fundamental or primordial in phenomenology. It's not that I am using some kind of rules to understand others' mind or mentality or mental states, as I just described. And neurobiologically, through mirror neurons, we know that what is a relevant cognitive mechanism at play. So this social cognitive phenomenon, this involves an experiential simulation of others' mental state in my mind. It's nothing cold theorizing. If I do not have certain experiences, for example, that is also interesting. Suppose I don't have experience of disgust inside me. Then if you have experience of disgust and which is apparent on your facial expression, I won't be able to read that. It's not just speculation, it is based on certain neurological studies done by Adolphs. Adolph studies on facial perception.
This is, what did you say?
Adolph. He's a scientist.
I see.
So he did certain studies on facial perception, perception of facial expression. Now there was a subject, he has gone through some accident through which his one region in brain, insula, that is damaged. It's part of the motor cortex, so it's part of the mirror neuron. And now this thing is damaged. Now this person can, if you show him face of happy man, sad man, or angry or fearful man, he can read these 4 facial expressions. But he cannot he cannot understand the facial expression of disgust.
I see.
Why is it so? Because he himself, because of the accident, damage insula, he cannot experience disgust. Now this is important, that you can understand mind of others based on your own mind, one thing. If you don't have certain experiences inside you, then you are not able to understand those emotions or feelings in others as well. So you are understanding others based on your own model, one thing. And this understanding other, this involves effect. It's not called theorizing. If you do not have that effect inside you, you don't read it in the other as well. So that's another pointer towards the relevant cognitive mechanism, that it involves effect as the relevant causal process. It's not just epiphenomenon.
Yes.
It's another thing. Because if that thing is which is responsible for his own experience of disgust, that thing is missing, then the relevant cognitive process, the social cognition of reading disgust in the other's face, that is also missing. So it means it is playing a causal role.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation. Click here to check out other interesting videos from School of Shastrartha. To subscribe, do not forget to do that. You can click here.